Of all the sounds I remember from my childhood, the loudest is the silence. It's a strange thing to say, I know. My childhood was filled with noise. The happy, chaotic noise of a big, loving family. The yelling and laughing and screen doors slamming at my grandma's house. But the silence that followed the laughter on that one August afternoon, that's the sound that settled into my bones and never really left. It was our annual family reunion. The whole clan descended on Grandma's house, the one she'd lived in for 50 years, nestled in a gentle valley with a lazy, meandering creek out back. The creek was the heart of our summers. We called it a creek, but it was really just a big stream, maybe 20 feet across and shallow enough for a kid to wade through without the water even reaching their shorts. It was our playground. We'd spend hours down there, skipping stones, hunting for crawdads and daring each other to cross on the mossy, slippery rocks. To us, that creek was as safe and constant as the sun rising. I was 15 that year, and my sister, Lily, was 8. 15 is a strange age. You're old enough to feel like you're on the edge of the adult world, but you're still young enough to be dismissed with a wave of a hand. Lily, though, she was on the edge of a different world altogether. She was a quiet kid, but not in a shy way. She was an observer. While the rest of us were running and screaming, Lily would be sitting perfectly still, watching a line of ants march across a picnic blanket, or tilting her head as if she were listening to a conversation in the rustling of the leaves. Mom called her an old soul. My Uncle David, with his booming laugh, called her a space cadet. I just thought she was Lily. She was my little sister, and I felt this fierce, unspoken need to protect her from a world that didn't always understand. Her stillness that day was perfect, or at least, it started that way. The sun was a warm blanket on our skin. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and Uncle David's legendary and slightly burnt barbecue. All the familiar sounds were there. My cousins, Jake and Emily, blasting some pop song from a portable speaker. My dad and uncles arguing about sports. My mom and aunts laughing on the porch swing, their voices like chimes. And Grandma, the center of our universe, humming as she brought out a pitcher of lemonade, her face a roadmap of happy wrinkles. I was down by the creek with Jake, trying to beat his record of 7 skips with a perfectly flat stone. Lily wasn't with us. I glanced back at the house and saw her standing alone on the edge of the manicured lawn, just staring at the water. She wasn't playing, wasn't even dipping her toes in. She was just watching, her small body rigid with a strange intensity. A little knot of unease tightened in my stomach. I'd seen her like this before. Once, she refused to get in the car, just stood on the driveway with her hands balled into fists. 5 minutes later, the car's battery died completely. Another time, she'd started crying for no reason during a picnic, begging Mom to take her home. A freak hailstorm hit an hour later, denting my dad's truck. Coincidences, everyone said, but I was beginning to wonder. I dropped my stone and walked up the grassy slope to her. "What's up, Lily Pad?" I asked, using my old nickname for her. She didn't look at me. Her eyes, a pale, clear blue, were fixed on the creek. "The water is wrong, Sam," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I looked at the creek. It looked the same as it always did. The sun sparkled on its surface, the gentle current gurgling over the smooth stones. "What do you mean, wrong? It looks fine." "No," she said, and this time she looked at me. There was no fantasy in her eyes, no childish game. There was a deep, unnerving certainty. "It's quiet, too quiet, like it's holding its breath, and it's heavy, heavy." I didn't get it. "Lily, it's just water." She shook her head, her blonde ponytail swinging. "It's going to come up," she said, her voice flat. "It's going to come up to the house. We have to go inside. We have to go to the attic." The attic. My grandma's attic was a terrifying place full of dusty heirlooms and spiders the size of my thumb. We were forbidden from going up there. The idea was so absurd, so out of left field, that I almost laughed myself. But the look on her face stopped me. It was pure, undiluted fear. Not for herself, but for all of us. "Okay," I said softly, taking her small, cool hand. "Okay. Let's go tell Mom and Dad." We walked back to the patio, which was the hub of all the activity. Uncle David was at the grill, flipping burgers and telling a loud, obnoxious story. My dad was laughing, a can of soda in his hand. The scene was so normal, so full of life, that Lily's warning felt like a whisper in a hurricane. "Mom?" Lily said, her voice small. My mom turned, her smile warm. "What is it, sweetie? Are you hungry?" "We need to go inside," Lily said, a little louder this time, her grip on my hand tightening. "We need to go upstairs, to the attic. The creek is coming." My mom's smile faltered, replaced by a look of gentle confusion. "The creek? Honey, the creek is fine. Look, the sun is shining." She pointed to the sky, which was, admittedly, a perfect cloudless blue. My dad knelt down. "What's this, kiddo? Did you have a bad dream?" "It's not a dream," Lily insisted, her voice starting to tremble. "The water is angry. I can feel it. It's coming fast." That's when Uncle David turned from the grill, a spatula in his hand. He'd overheard. A wide, teasing grin spread across his face. "Well, what do we have here? A little weather prophet?" He winked at my dad. "Hear that, everyone?" he bellowed, his voice carrying across the entire yard. "Lily says the creek is angry. A flash flood is coming. Everyone run for the hills." A few people chuckled. My cousin Jake snorted. "Yeah, right. The creek's like a foot deep. We have to go." Lily's voice rose, cracking with desperation. "Please, you have to listen." And then it happened. The sound that I can still hear so clearly. Uncle David threw his head back and laughed. It wasn't a mean laugh. Not really. It was a dismissive, patronizing laugh. The kind of laugh adults use when a child says something utterly ridiculous. And his laugh was contagious. It rippled through the adults. My aunt, my other uncle, even my own dad cracked a smile, shaking his head fondly. They weren't laughing at her to be cruel. They were laughing because the idea was impossible. They were laughing because they were safe and happy on a beautiful summer day, and her warning didn't fit into their world. They laughed. I felt a surge of hot anger. I saw Lily's face crumple. It wasn't the look of a child who's been told no, it was the look of someone who had screamed a vital, life-saving truth and been met with mockery. Her shoulders slumped in defeat. The fight went out of her. "Come on, Sam," she whispered, tugging on my hand. Her eyes were glassy with unshed tears. She turned and walked toward the back door of the house, pulling me with her. Grandma saw the look on her face and her expression softened. "Oh, don't mind them, honey," she said, trying to intercept us. "Your uncle is just a big tease. You know that. Come have a cookie." Lily just shook her head and kept walking. I followed her, casting one last, angry look over my shoulder at the laughing adults. They had already moved on, the conversation turning back to sports and neighborhood gossip. Lily's warning had been a momentary, amusing diversion. That was the warning. And that was the laughter. We went inside. The house was cool and quiet compared to the yard. Lily didn't say anything. She just walked to the bottom of the main staircase and sat down on the first step, her arms wrapped around her knees. I sat down next to her. "They're not bad people, Lily," I said, trying to soothe her. "They just don't understand." She just stared at the front door. "They will," she said, and her voice was so hollow it scared me. That was maybe 1 minute. The second minute began with a change in the air. The light coming through the windows seemed to dim, just a fraction. It was as if someone had pulled a thin, gray veil across the sun. Outside, I heard the pop music from Jake's speaker suddenly cut out. Battery must have died. I heard him complain. The third minute brought the sound. It wasn't thunder. It was a low, deep rumble that seemed to come from the ground itself. It was a vibration I felt in my teeth. The glassware in Grandma's china cabinet rattled softly. Outside, the chatter quieted. "What was that?" I heard my aunt ask. Felt like a tremor. My dad said, his voice losing its carefree tone. The fourth minute, the sky broke. It wasn't a gradual rain. It was as if a celestial bucket had been appended. A solid wall of water slammed against the house, so loud it sounded like handfuls of gravel being thrown against the windows. It wasn't rain. It was a deluge. Through the living room window, I saw the world outside disappear behind a curtain of gray. The happy sounds from the yard were replaced by shouts of alarm. Get inside! Get in! The back door burst open and my family stumbled in, soaked to the skin in seconds. They were laughing again, but this time it was a nervous, adrenaline-fueled laughter. Can you believe this? Came out of nowhere. Uncle David said, shaking water from his hair. My burgers are ruined, he added, trying to make a joke. But no one was really listening. They were all looking out the windows, their faces painted with disbelief. The yard was already turning into a soupy marsh. And then, the fifth minute began. It started with a new sound, beneath the drumming of the rain. It was a roar, a deep, guttural, angry roar. It was the sound of 1,000 trees being ripped from the earth. It was the sound of power, raw and untamed. Everyone froze. What in God's name is that? My grandma whispered, her hand flying to her chest. We all crowded the back window. What we saw didn't make sense. The creek, it was gone. In its place was a churning brown monster. It wasn't water anymore. It was a liquid batter of mud, rocks, and entire trees, moving with terrifying speed. It had already swallowed the lawn. It was no longer a creek. It was a river, a raging torrent, and it was climbing the gentle slope toward the house with impossible speed. I saw Uncle David's face. The color drained from it. The jovial, teasing man was gone, replaced by a stranger with wide, terrified eyes. He looked from the window to Lily, who was still sitting calmly on the stairs. The first impact hit the house like a car crash. The whole foundation shuddered. A spiderweb of cracks appeared in the living room plaster. Then came the water. It didn't seep. It exploded through the bottom of the doors, fanning out across the hardwood floors in a muddy tide. Panic erupted. My aunt screamed. Jake and Emily, who had looked so cool in untouchable moments before, were now just scared kids, their faces pale with shock. Upstairs, my dad yelled, his voice tight with command. Everyone, get upstairs. Now! No one needed to be told twice. There was a frantic scramble for the staircase, a tangle of wet, terrified bodies. I grabbed Lily's hand and pulled her up with me. She was the only one who wasn't screaming or crying. She just moved with a quiet, somber purpose. We thundered up the stairs to the second floor. The lights flickered, then died, plunging us into a gloomy twilight. Below us, we could hear the horrifying sound of the first floor surrendering. The crash of furniture toppling over, the sickening groan of wood under pressure, and the constant, deafening roar of the water. The water was climbing the stairs. We could see it, a muddy tongue licking at the steps we had just vacated. The attic. Someone shrieked. I don't even know who. My dad was already there, at the end of the upstairs hallway, pulling on the cord that led to the attic stairs. The rickety wooden ladder unfolded with a groan. Go! Go! He urged, pushing my mom toward it. One by one, we scrambled up into the hot, suffocating darkness of the attic. I pushed Lily up ahead of me and then climbed up myself, my heart hammering against my ribs. My dad was the last one up, and he pulled the heavy wooden door shut behind him, sealing us in. And then, there was silence. Not true silence. The storm raged outside, a muffled roar now. The house beneath us groaned and creaked like a dying beast. But among us, the 14 members of my family crammed into a dusty, sweltering attic, there was a profound and absolute silence. The screaming had stopped. The panic had subsided into a stunned, breathless terror. And no one was laughing. 5 minutes. That's all it took. 5 minutes from the moment they had laughed at my little sister's impossible warning to the moment we were all huddled in the dark, in the exact place she had told us to go, listening to the world we knew being washed away. The silence stretched on, thick and heavy as the humid air. We were shadows in the gloom, our shapes barely visible from the faint light filtering through a single, grimy dormer window. The only sound inside our wooden prison was the ragged, shallow breathing of 14 terrified people. I held Lily close to my side. Her small body was a point of stillness in the chaos. She wasn't even trembling. She leaned her head against my arm, as if she were just resting. I was shaking so hard I was afraid I'd scare her. I looked around at the faces I could make out in the gloom. My mom was crying silently, her face buried in my dad's shoulder. My dad stood like a statue, staring at the attic door as if he could hold back the flood with the force of his will. Grandma was sitting on an old trunk, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white, her lips moving in a silent prayer. And then there was Uncle David. He was sitting on the floor, his back against a dusty stack of old magazines, his head in his hands. His broad shoulders, which always seemed so full of strength and bluster, were slumped in defeat. He wasn't the loud life of the party uncle anymore. He was just a man, stripped bare of all his certainty. Terrified in the dark, the silence was a living thing. It was made of guilt. It was made of regret. It was a suffocating blanket of everything left unsaid. Every now and then, someone would shift, and the sound of a foot scuffing on the old floorboards was like a gunshot. After what felt like an hour, but was probably only 10 minutes, Grandma's voice, frail and trembling, cut through the quiet. "Lily," she whispered. Everyone froze. It was the first word spoken. Lily lifted her head from my shoulder. "Yes, Grandma?" Grandma looked at her, her face a mess of tears and grime in the dim light. "You were right, sweetheart," she said, her voice breaking. "You were right. And we were so foolish. I am so sorry." The apology hung in the air, raw and honest. It wasn't just for her. It was for all of them. Lily just nodded slowly. She didn't say "I told you so." She didn't have to. The roaring water beneath us was saying it for her. Another long stretch of silence followed. Below us, a loud crash echoed through the house, followed by the tinkling sound of breaking glass. The water was on the second floor now. We could hear it sloshing just beneath the attic floorboards. I felt a fresh wave of terror. This wooden box wasn't a sanctuary. It was a trap. My cousin Emily, who was 17 and worshipped by all the younger kids for being so cool and unflappable, started to sob. Not loudly, just a quiet, hopeless sound. Her brother Jake, who was always so tough, put a clumsy arm around her. They looked at Lily, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and something else. The little cousin they always ignored, the weird, quiet one, had seen this coming. She had tried to save them. Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes. Time had dissolved along with the land. We listened to the sounds of my grandma's life being destroyed below us. Her favorite armchair, the piano she taught my mom to play on, 50 years of memories being churned into splinters and mud. Every crash, every groan of the house, was another testament to our foolishness. At some point, Uncle David lifted his head. His face was pale and haggard. He looked directly at Lily. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He closed it, swallowed hard, and looked down at his hands. The silence from him was the most powerful confession of all. The man who had led the laughter had no words left. I held on to Lily, my role as her protector feeling like a fraud. I had brought her to them, but I hadn't fought for her. I hadn't screamed at them, hadn't shaken them by the shoulders and made them listen. I had just let their laughter wash over us and retreated with her. The guilt was a cold, hard knot in my own gut. The water was rising. We could feel the floorboards beneath us getting damp. The air grew colder. Despair began to set in. A quiet, creeping thing. This was it. This was how it ended. Trapped in a dusty attic because we hadn't listened to an 8-year-old girl. It was Lily who spoke next. Her voice was clear and calm, not a whisper. "It's stopping," she said. My dad looked up, his face grim. "What, honey?" "The water," she said. "It's not pushing anymore. It's getting tired." We all fell silent again, but this time we were listening for what she heard. And slowly, I began to notice it too. The violent, angry roar from outside had softened. It was still there, but it had lost its furious edge. The house wasn't groaning as much. The relentless, percussive assault against the walls had eased. A sliver of hope, fragile and tentative, entered the attic. We waited. We didn't dare speak. We just sat in the dark, listening to the world change again. The rain lessened, turning from a roar to a steady drum, and then to a soft patter. And finally, it stopped. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't the silence of fear and guilt. It was the silence of suspense, of waiting. It was almost dawn when we heard the new sound. A faint, rhythmic chopping. Whump, 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 whump. A helicopter. Tears of relief streamed down my mom's face. My dad let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for hours. A weak cheer went through our small group. My dad managed to pry open the dormer window. He waved his t-shirt, shouting until his voice was hoarse. The chopping sound grew louder and louder until it was directly overhead. A searchlight beam cut through the darkness, sweeping over us. A blinding, angelic light. Rescue came in the form of a man in a harness being lowered from the sky. They took us out one by one. Grandma first, then the younger kids. They put Lily in a harness, and she looked so small and unafraid as she was lifted up into the sky. I was one of the last to go. As I was pulled up, away from the roof, I finally saw it. I saw what was left of my world. It wasn't a valley with a house and a creek anymore. It was a vast brown lake. The water stretched from one side of the valley to the other. Treetops poked out like lonely weeds, and my grandma's house. Only the roof was visible. We had been on a tiny island, the last dry spot for miles. If we hadn't gone to the attic, I couldn't finish the thought. We were taken to a temporary shelter in a school gym on higher ground. We were wrapped in blankets and given hot soup. We were the lucky ones. We were all alive. In the days that followed, the story came out. A dam had burst in the hills miles upriver. A wall of water had surged down the valley with no warning. No official warning anyway. Our family was never the same after that day. The material things were gone. Grandma's house was a total loss. A condemned, mud-filled shell. She moved in with my parents, but the real change was deeper. It was in the way we looked at each other. It was in the things we no longer said. The laughter was gone, especially Uncle David's booming, confident laugh. He was a quieter man now, sober. He'd spent hours just staring into space. A few weeks after the flood, I saw him go over to Lily while she was drawing on the living room floor. He knelt down beside her, his big, clumsy body looking so awkward. "Lilybug," he said, his voice thick. I am so sorry." Lily didn't even look up from her drawing. "I know," she said simply. She shaded in a patch of blue sky on her paper. He just knelt there for a moment longer, then got up and walked away. It was an absolution of sorts, but the weight never truly left his shoulders. None of us ever forgot. They listen to Lily now. It's not just listening, it's a kind of reverence. When she says the air feels heavy, my dad checks the weather radar. When she says a dog in the street looks sad, my aunt brings it a bowl of water. They watch her, studying her quiet moods, trying to decipher the world she seems to be tuned into. They don't treat her like a prophet or a psychic. They treat her like a survivor of their own ignorance, a living reminder of the day they chose laughter over truth. The silence that fell in the attic that day never fully went away. It settled into the foundations of our new family dynamic. It's there during holiday dinners, in the lulls in conversation. It's a shared memory, a collective scar. It is the sound of respect. It is the sound of shame. It is the sound of a lesson learned at the highest possible price, just short of life itself. It's the sound of my family finally, quietly, listening to my sister.